Hey, what's up? I am Michelle B, and in this video I want to talk about what to do when you have literally zero motivation to do the things that you set out for yourself to do. So maybe last night or last week you wrote yourself a to-do list, you had plans, your intentions were real, and then you woke up and it was like any motivation that you previously harbored just died in your sleep. Motivation death happens to all of us at semi-regular intervals. So I went through this last week. My motivation seemed to die almost on a daily basis. So I want to chat about what I did in that situation, as well as some things that you can do that are practical when you have zero motivation to do the things. Before I get into it, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community with thousands of classes in things like design, photography, productivity. All of these classes are run by people that are experts in their fields. You have people like Thomas Frank, Gary Vaynerchuk, Murray Andrews, teaching you how to improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work that you love. It's also more affordable than most learning platforms out there, so an annual subscription is less than $10 a month. The first 500 people to sign up using the link down below will get their first 2 months for free, so that you can try it out, see how you like it. The most recent course that I watched was a course on design thinking because I have a girlfriend who is really into design thinking. She's an amazing human being, so I wanted to be in the design thinking world with her so that when we talked about it, I felt like I knew what I was talking about, also so that I could apply it to my day-to-day. I'll have the name of that course listed in the description below if you want to check it out as well. Let's get into the video. So the first thing to consider doing when you have zero motivation, and this isn't the only thing to consider doing, there are many options for you. We're gonna try and talk through all of them, is to rebel against past you. Throw away your to-do list, your well laid out plans. Accept that you're not going to follow through on the things that you set out for yourself to do, but don't just stop there and sit down on the couch and watch season 2 of The Handmaid's Tale. Decide instead to do other stuff that you hadn't planned to do. This is called productive procrastination, and it works really well if you have an inner rebel, which I genuinely think that we all do despite what you may have scored on Gretchen Rubin's personality test. If you watch this channel, it is very likely that you like to plan, you like to make to-do lists, you like to fill out your calendar. You probably like stationery. Basically, you like to decide ahead of time what you're going to do with your time. But there is a competing part of us that doesn't want to do what we're told to do. We don't like the idea of those well laid out, thoughtful plans. That part of you just wants freedom, and every once in a while it pops up and it kills your plans, it kills your motivation because it's sick of being told what to do. So last week I had no motivation to do any of the things. I had 2 things that I'd set out for myself to do. One was to film and one was to write video plans. I didn't want to do any of it, so I decided that I wouldn't do any of it. But instead of just like snuggling up in bed and doing nothing, even though that's what I wanted to do, I decided that I would set up the furniture that had been sitting up in my room forever, instead of writing video plans. I meal prepped for the week when I was supposed to be screen recording for a video. I edited and scheduled like 7 videos that I've been procrastinating doing for a long time. And even though editing videos isn't a task that I particularly love doing, because it wasn't what I had planned to do, I kind of thrived while doing it. So if your motivation to do the stuff that you planned on doing is dead, rebel and do things that you had absolutely no intention of doing that are still going to move you forward and make you feel like, yes, I had a good, productive day today. Remember, this is option 1 and it may not be available to you depending on your energy levels and depending on whether it actually is your inner rebel that is the cause of your lack of motivation. So let's move on to option 2. Option 2 is to self-care the hell out of yourself. If-then checklists, I've discussed them before, I'm a big fan of them. They will continue to be promoted on my channel because I love them and I think they're super useful. If you feel like crap, you feel sluggish, you feel off, productive procrastination absolutely seems unappealing to you, it's probably not your inner rebel shouting at you to switch things up, but it could be that you haven't taken care of yourself to the extent that you should have as of late. So when I'm lacking in motivation, I feel kind of blue, sluggish, I have a little checklist that I can go through that targets all of the usual factors that cause me to feel sluggish and off. These are factors that I know can heavily influence how I feel. I actually made a whole video on the questions that I ask when I feel awful, so if you just swap feel awful for feel unmotivated, pretty much the same questions can apply. I'll link that down below and up here. These are really like basic things, just making sure your basic needs are met. Like, have you eaten something that's nutritious and balanced? Have you showered? Are you clean? What's the state of your home looking like? Have you been drinking water? All of these things are really small individually, but when you start to actually address them one by one and identify things that maybe aren't met, you'll start to feel your energy slowly rise. You'll start to feel more human and more capable of motivating yourself. Before you try to force yourself to be productive, when your body is rebelling against it, sit back and do a check-in with yourself with an if-then checklist, or watch through my video. Look back to the basics. It may be that you're burnt out, you've worked yourself too hard, and you actually do need to take a day to do some self-care. Then give it another go. The next thing to consider doing is to use action to create motivation. So I think we usually think of this the other way around. So we try to use motivation to create action, when in fact the more effective way of doing it is to do something, then feel motivated. There is a name for this. I don't know what it is. If you know it, chuck it in the comments. So one of the best ways to get myself motivated when I'm feeling absolutely not about it, like productive procrastination isn't working, I don't want to do a single thing, I just want to slug out, is to set a timer to clean for 10 minutes. So what I usually do is I yell at my Google Home, I say, hey, can you set a 10-minute timer? That way there's like literally zero friction between me and setting a timer. If you try to do it on your phone, it's like you have to log in, you have to find the app, you have to go to it. Obviously, if that's your only option, do that. But a Google Home is just super easy, so if you do have one, utilize it. I almost always, like, reliably find that after 10 minutes of running around and cleaning, getting my space nice and fresh, that afterwards I feel motivated to do things. Usually I'll continue after the 10-minute cleaning more, and then I'll be like, okay, what can I do next? A 10-minute clean might not be for you, but figure out like a challenging, doable task that you can maybe do with a timer. Ideally, you want it to be something that you can be like, okay, like tick done within that short period of time. That way you get that accomplished and motivated feeling, and then use that high to continue on to keep on doing more productive stuff. The next thing to consider is to break it down. So a real cause of lack of motivation can be overwhelm. You can bounce back from overwhelm by, doing a self-care check-in. Making sure your space is clean and clear can definitely help, but also breaking down whatever the task at hand is that you need to do. So for example, if you wrote down a to-do of write blog post, but you hadn't really written that many blog posts before, you didn't really have a structure in your mind of what that meant, that's like a lot. There are a lot of steps towards writing a blog post that are not captured in the to-do write a blog post. So if you find yourself like repelled by that to-do, that means that you haven't broken it down enough. And that can usually be a really good indicator of when you need to break something down. It's like, how repelled are you by a certain to-do? If it repels you, break it down, make it smaller. So for a blog post, cut it down to those very basic steps, like start from scratch. Disregard write a blog post as a to-do and start with create a mind map of blog topics that I'd like to post about. Write 3 bullet points for each section. And if you still look at it and you're still just like, oh, I'm repelled, like the idea of doing that is too much, too overwhelming, break it down even further. Do what you gotta do to get yourself to do the thing. The next thing for you to consider is to revisit your why and clarify whether it's needed. So when I plan out my goals, I like to write out my what, my why, and my how. If you watched my video on planning my goals for 2019, I go through all of that. I'll link it down below and up here. All of those parts are really important, the why, what, and the how, but the why is so important. Because if your why isn't valid, you're not gonna do the thing, regardless of how well planned it is and how smart your goal might be. So usually your why is like a healthy mix of intrinsic, I get joy from doing this motivation, as well as a little bit of extrinsic, I will get something at the end of doing this motivation. So when you're struggling to do something and it's related to something in the bigger picture, clarify your why, revisit your why. If you don't have a why, create a why. I set 3-month goals and I revisit my why every single week. And when you reach like that last month of the 3 months, you definitely are questioning like, why am I doing this? But once you revisit that why and just like really sit on it and think about it, you're like, okay. And the motivation does come back. You might find when you look at your why actually isn't strong enough. And maybe you shouldn't be using your energy to be doing the thing that you have set out to do. But you might also find that revisiting your why and clarifying your why is the kick in the ass that you need to start getting motivated again. The next thing that you should consider is how your life circumstances are affecting your motivation, because you can't look at the situation like in a vacuum. If you're stressed out, you're anxious, something's happening in your relationship with your friends, at work, it is going to affect your motivation to do the things that you want to do. In the last few weeks, I could write a pretty definitive list of things, circumstances in my life that could be impacting my motivation. I was anxious about going under anesthesia for my wisdom teeth, which sounds silly, but the anxiety was real. Work was feeling out of control. Some big financial stuff came up. and a few other fun things were thrown into the mix. And as much as you think those things might be completely unrelated to your current to-do, those external factors will absolutely affect you, even if it is in seemingly indirect ways like waking up with no motivation to do completely unrelated tasks. Sometimes those big life circumstances like hating your job, feeling insecure and lonely, hating your living situation aren't things that you can necessarily tackle one by one, treating them like to-dos, but they are things that you can journal about, that you can brainstorm about, that you can send off emails or messages about to start those conversations. If you need to talk to someone, they're things that you could book in a therapist session about. And sometimes you need to address those things before you can start to feel a little bit more motivated in your day-to-day life. Even just addressing that these life circumstances exist, maybe booking some time in to talk to someone about those things can take some weight off your shoulders, just knowing that something's going on to reduce the impact of those circumstances in the background. Another option for you is to reward yourself. Sometimes the only way to motivate yourself is to have a big fat reward at the end of the day when you get the thing done. So after you finish editing the video, writing the outline, doing the essay, you can start the TV show, read the book, go hang out with a friend, go do that thing that you've been wanting to do for a while but just haven't found the time to do. This is like the lowest of low motivation hacks. Extrinsic motivation or like carrot stick motivation generally isn't the best form of motivation, but sometimes it just has to be done. You have to rely on those external rewards to get you through, especially if it's a task that you like really don't feel like doing but you just are obligated to do. Don't forget to check out the Skillshare link below. The first 500 people will get their first 2 months free. If you liked this video, you might like a video that I made a little while ago on how to get motivated and get things done. I'll have that linked on the screen and down below. I appreciate you all so bloody much. I will see you soon.